Let's get right into it. Number 10. The yawn that lied to you. You think you yawn because you're tired. Adorable. Wrong. Yawning is actually your brain hitting the emergency brake when it senses your internal temperature creeping up or your blood oxygen dipping in a way it doesn't love. That big dramatic mouth stretch is a built-in cooling system, sucking in cold air to chill your overheating brain like it's a laptop fan that only has one setting: theatrical. Here's the part nobody tells you: yawning spikes when you're anxious, not just sleepy. Public speakers yawn backstage. Skydivers yawn before they jump. Soldiers yawn before combat. None of them are bored. Their nervous systems are quietly screaming, regulate, 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 and the yawn is the pressure valve letting some of that steam out. It's contagious too, which sounds wholesome until you realize the science suggests it's an ancient herd survival signal. Your ancestors yawning at each other to sync up alertness so the group didn't get blindsided by a saber-toothed cat while half of them were dozing. So when you catch a yawn from a stranger on the subway, you're not being polite. You're participating in a 30,000-year-old panic relay system. Your jaw cracking open mid-meeting isn't laziness. It's your amygdala filing a noise complaint about stress hormones and demanding immediate ventilation. The cruelest twist is that suppressing a yawn takes more effort than just doing it, because your body genuinely will not let this one go. It's that important to the system. So next time someone accuses you of being bored in a meeting, you can tell them, with total confidence, that you were actually regulating your cerebral thermostat in real time, which is both true and a great way to get fired. Basically, your face is just an overworked air conditioning unit that occasionally gets mistaken for rudeness. Number 9. The stomach that disowns you. Imagine your body, in the middle of a crisis, looks at your digestive system and says, "Yeah, we don't need that right now," and just shuts the whole thing down like a landlord cutting the power. That nauseous, hollowed-out, gut-drop feeling you get before a job interview or a breakup conversation isn't your stomach being dramatic for fun. It's blood being violently rerouted away from digestion and toward your muscles, because somewhere deep in your lizard brain, a tiny ancient committee has decided you might need to sprint or throw a punch in the next 10 seconds. This is the same system that ran the show when your ancestors were deciding whether that rustling bush was the wind or a leopard, and it has not been updated since. Digestion is expensive, biologically speaking, and panic mode treats it like a luxury subscription you can't afford mid-emergency, so it cancels it instantly, no refund. That's why you can't eat before a big presentation even though you're starving. Your gut has been benched. Some people get the opposite glitch and need to sprint to a bathroom right before something stressful, which is just your body deciding that carrying extra cargo while fleeing a predator is a liability, so it lightens the load. Charming. Your intestines, in this moment, are not thinking about nutrition, they're thinking about whether you're about to become lunch. The irony is that none of the actual threats in your life, emails, awkward eye contact, your boss saying, "Can we talk?" require you to outrun anything, yet your gut treats every single one like a stampede is imminent. So the next time your stomach turns into a washing machine before a first date, just remember, that's not nerves, that's 12,000 years of evolution insisting you might need to flee a coffee shop on foot. Number 8. The heart that forgets you're safe. Your heart doesn't actually know the difference between a tiger and a slightly passive-aggressive text from your coworker. That's the unsettling truth. The moment your brain flags something as a potential threat, your heart rate spikes, not because there's any logic behind it, but because adrenaline just got dumped into your bloodstream like someone smashed a fire alarm, in case. This is your sympathetic nervous system doing its one job, which is preparing you to fight or run, regardless of whether the actual threat is a mugger or a Wi-Fi router that won't reconnect. Your heart starts pounding to push more oxygen to your muscles faster, because somewhere in the ancient operating system running your body, muscles still means legs that need to escape a predator, not fingers that need to type an apology email. This is why you can feel your pulse in your ears during something as mundane as waiting for test results, or hovering over the send button on a message you're nervous about. There's no predator. There's no chase. There's just you, sitting very still, while your internal alarm system throws a full tactical response at a situation that requires zero physical movement whatsoever. And the kicker is that this response doesn't discriminate between real danger and perceived danger. Your body reacts identically whether you're being chased by a dog or just remembering, at 2 a.m., that embarrassing thing you said in 3rd grade. Your cardiovascular system has one mode for, and it commits fully every single time, no matter how small the actually is. So when your heart races before a presentation you've rehearsed 40 times, that's not you being unprepared, that's your nervous system mistaking a conference room for a battlefield. Bless its overachieving, wildly miscalibrated heart. Number 7. The sweat that makes no sense. You're sitting in an air-conditioned room, completely still, and suddenly your palms turn into a water park. This is not a temperature problem. This is panic doing what panic does best, which is solving problems that don't exist with solutions that don't help. Sweating under stress comes from a different gland network than regular heat sweat. It's called apocrine sweating, and it's tied directly to emotional arousal, not temperature. Translation: your body believes that being slick and slippery will somehow help you survive an encounter, which made evolutionary sense back when slipping out of a predator's grip was a genuinely useful skill. Now it just means your handshake feels like a wet sponge during a job interview. Your feet do this too, which is why nervous people sometimes leave actual footprints, and your underarms get singled out for special treatment because apparently your body decided pits are priority real estate for emergency moisture. The irony is staggering. Stress sweat doesn't even smell the same as regular sweat, because it's loaded with extra fatty compounds that bacteria love to feast on, which is why nervous sweat smells worse despite technically being a smaller amount of liquid. Your body is, quite literally, trying to make you slippery and slightly stinkier as a defense mechanism, in a world where the biggest predator you'll face today is a strongly worded email from your manager. There is no chase to escape. There is no grip to slip out of. There is just you, palms drenched, trying to open a jar of pickles while your nervous system insists this is somehow tactically advantageous. Basically, your sweat glands are stuck running defense drills for a war that ended 10,000 years ago, and nobody's told them to stand down. Number 6. The brain fog that isn't forgetfulness. You walk into a room mid-argument and completely forget the perfect comeback you had 30 seconds ago. This isn't because you're forgetful, it's because your brain just rerouted resources away from your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for clever, articulate thought, and shoved them toward your amygdala, the part responsible for react now, think later. Under perceived threat, your body treats higher reasoning as a non-essential service, like Wi-Fi during a power outage. Why waste energy crafting a witty rebuttal when you might need that energy to fight or flee? The result is that classic experience of going completely blank during an argument, a test, or a confrontation, only to remember everything you wanted to say 4 hours later in the shower, when the threat has long passed and your prefrontal cortex finally gets its signal back. This is also why people in genuinely dangerous situations often report tunnel vision and memory gaps. The brain is so busy prioritizing survival that it stops bothering to record the boring administrative details, like what color the car was or what your coworker actually said before you snapped back with something incoherent. Stress essentially puts your higher-order thinking on an unpaid leave of absence, and when you try to just think clearly during a panic spiral, you're fighting actual blood flow that has physically relocated elsewhere in your skull. Your brain isn't broken in those moments, it's just decided that surviving is more urgent than sounding smart, which, weirdly, is a pretty reasonable trade-off if you're being chased by a bear and a pretty terrible one if you're just trying to remember your own phone number to the cashier. Number 5. The shaking you can't control. Your hands start trembling before a big moment, and you have no idea why, because logically you know nobody is attacking you, you're just holding a microphone. That tremor is adrenaline doing exactly what it's designed to do, which is prime your muscles for explosive action by flooding them with extra energy faster than they know what to do with. Picture a car engine revving in neutral, all that power, nowhere to go, so it shows up as vibration instead of motion. Your body has essentially pumped you full of rocket fuel for a sprint you're never going to take, and the unused energy has to escape somewhere, so it leaks out through your fingers, your knees, sometimes even your voice. This is why nervous people get that wobbly, slightly seasick quality to their speech. Vocal cords are muscles too, and they're getting the same panic memo as everything else. Animals in the wild actually shake on purpose after a threat passes, visibly trembling to physically discharge stress hormones, which is a real survival behavior seen in everything from rabbits to elephants. Humans mostly suppress this because shaking uncontrollably during a wedding toast is socially frowned upon, so instead we just white-knuckle through it, holding all that nervous energy hostage in our nervous system with nowhere to go. The tremor isn't weakness, it's leftover horsepower from a getaway car your brain built for an emergency that turned out to just be public speaking. Your body prepared you to outrun a predator, and instead you're using that same biological machinery to hand someone a PowerPoint clicker. Number 4. The voice that cracks. You open your mouth to speak during a tense moment and what comes out sounds like a teenager going through puberty for the second time. This isn't embarrassment, it's anatomy. Your vocal cords are surrounded by tiny muscles, and under stress those muscles tighten right along with your shoulders, your jaw, and basically every other muscle group that got the panic memo. A tightened throat changes the way air moves past your vocal cords, which produces that thin, shaky, slightly higher-pitched voice you hate hearing in recordings of yourself during arguments or interviews. Some researchers think this vocal tightening is actually a holdover from a primal flinch response, the same reflex that makes you hunch your shoulders and tense your neck when something startles you, because protecting the throat used to be a literal survival priority back when actual predators were going for the jugular. Now your throat tenses up over something as mild as a Zoom call freezing at the worst possible moment, and your voice comes out sounding like it's been put through a blender. This is also why public speaking ranks so high on lists of common fears, right up there with heights and spiders. Your body is treating an audience's attention the same way it would treat a predator's gaze, fixed and assessing and potentially dangerous. The cruel irony is that the more you try to consciously control your voice to sound calm, the more your brain notices you're trying to control something, which it interprets as further evidence that something's wrong, which tightens your throat even more. It's a feedback loop with the comedic timing of a sitcom and the biological logic of an ancient survival circuit that has no idea what a quarterly earnings call is. Number 3. The need to pee at the worst time. You're about to walk into the biggest meeting of your career, and suddenly your bladder is staging a full rebellion. This is not coincidence, and it's not because you drank too much coffee, although that probably didn't help. Under acute stress, your body shifts blood flow and nerve activity away from non-essential functions, and ironically this can either suppress or trigger urinary urgency depending on which part of your nervous system gets louder in that moment. Some people's systems interpret a threat as a cue to lighten the load, almost like an animal that empties itself before fleeing so it can move faster and not waste energy on cargo it doesn't need. It sounds absurd until you remember that plenty of animals, from rodents to deer, do this exact thing when startled, instinctively evacuating before a sprint because a few extra ounces of bladder weight could theoretically slow down an escape. Your body, deep down, still runs on this same firmware, even though your version of escaping a predator is just trying to find a bathroom before a job interview without looking like you're sprinting through a hallway. Stress hormones also increase overall nervous system activity, which can make your bladder feel more sensitive and urgent than it actually is, tricking you into thinking you need to go way more than you really do. So that frantic, can't concentrate on anything else urge before a big test isn't your body failing you. It's your nervous system trying to optimize you for a getaway sprint that, statistically, you are never going to need to make. Number 2. The cold hands that betray you. You go to shake someone's hand and yours feels like it just came out of a freezer, even though the room is perfectly warm. This happens because your blood vessels near the surface of your skin constrict under stress, redirecting blood flow away from your extremities and toward your core and major muscle groups, the ones your body thinks you'll need for fighting or fleeing. It's the same logic as a city shutting off power to the suburbs during an emergency to keep the hospital running. Your hands and feet are the suburbs, and your heart, lungs, and big muscles are the hospital. This is also why people sometimes go pale with fear, because the same vessel constriction happening in your fingers is happening in your face, pulling blood away from the surface and toward wherever your body thinks the actual emergency is unfolding. Cold hands during stress are also doing double duty as a defense mechanism, since less blood near the skin's surface theoretically means less blood loss if you get injured, which is a wildly specific contingency plan for a body that's currently just nervous about a first date. The frustrating part is that cold, clammy hands often happen during the exact moments you most want to seem calm and composed, like handshakes, interviews, or holding someone's hand for the first time, which means your body's emergency protocol is actively sabotaging the impression you're trying to make. You can't will your hands warm either, because this isn't something under conscious control, it's autonomic, which is your nervous system's way of saying, I don't care what you want right now, I'm driving. So next time your hands go ice cold before something nerve-wracking, know that your circulatory system has, without asking permission, decided you're one bad encounter away from major blood loss, and it's rerouting resources accordingly. Number 1. The freeze that isn't laziness. You've heard of fight or flight, but there's a third option your body loves to pull out at the worst possible moment, and it's called freeze. This is the response where, instead of running or fighting, you just stop, completely, like someone hit pause on your entire being. Maybe you've experienced it during an argument where you suddenly couldn't form words, or in a near accident where you just sat there instead of reacting, or during a confrontation where your legs simply refused the very reasonable request to move. This isn't cowardice and it isn't you being slow, it's an ancient survival strategy borrowed from prey animals, the same instinct that makes a rabbit go completely still when a hawk's shadow passes overhead, because sometimes the safest move against a predator with sharp eyesight and fast reflexes is to become invisible rather than risk a chase you can't win. Your nervous system runs this same calculation in milliseconds, way faster than your conscious brain can weigh in, and if it decides fighting or fleeing won't work, it just shuts the system down into immobility instead, sometimes paired with a weirdly calm or detached feeling, almost like your brain stepped outside to get some air while your body handled the emergency without it. This is why people in shock often describe feeling strangely calm or disconnected, because that calmness isn't peace, it's dissociation, your brain's way of distancing you from a situation it has decided is too overwhelming to fully process in real time. The freeze response gets a bad reputation because it looks like doing nothing, but biologically it's an active, deliberate strategy, not a failure to act. So if you've ever frozen during a moment that demanded action and spent the aftermath wondering why your body didn't just run, the answer is that your nervous system made an executive decision on your behalf, weighed the odds, and decided that becoming a statue was, somehow, the smartest move on the table. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.